Hello everybody, thank you for showing up, thank you for being here. My name is Bastian Hauck, I am the CEO and founder of dedoc, and I'm very, very happy to see so many new faces and so many familiar faces at today's dedoc symposium. There we go. I'll start very quickly to just run you through what we will be doing today. We will start with Chantal Mathieu. Chantal, I always say president of EASD. I know there's something that goes around it, but you will be giving the words of welcome, and we very much look forward to that. Our first speaker from the patient perspective is Ana Alvarez Pagola. She's working with Inodia and with Chantal and many other great people with lived experience, and she will talk about the lived experience impact and how important that is for research. We will then go to Deeksha from India, who will talk about her work with the Diabetes Foundation. Then we will have Laura, and Laura will talk about pregnancy and type 1 diabetes. And last not least, we have Taylor Lawrence from the United States, who is the dedoc artist in residence this year. One side note on that, we had planned on bringing Taylor to EASD as our first ever artist in residence back in 2020, but you will remember what happened in 2020, that EASD was virtual, so it never took place in person. So we are very, very happy that a couple of years after and hopefully post-pandemic, we have him back. And Taylor not only brought his art on screen, he also brought real art that will be going onto auction as of tomorrow during the dedoc reception. Before we start, I would like to introduce the dedoc voices. Not only the dedoc voices up here, the 4 that are members of our scholarship program. dedoc runs the largest scholarship program in the world, the dedoc Voices program. And we bring up to 25 dedoc voices, diabetes advocates from across the world, to scientific conferences like EASD. We also bring 25 to ATTD, to ISPAT, to ADA, to the German Diabetes Conference, the Diabetes UK Conference, and others. So just before we start, so you know who they are, I would like all dedoc voices to quickly get up and turn around so you can see the number of people. And I'm very happy to say that we have dedoc voices from, as I said, 25 people we brought here, another 25 people who are joining us virtually right now. So this symposium is one of the very, very few that are not being streamed on the EASD platform. We're actually, as we talk, streaming this live on our website, dedoc.org, on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. So not only are members of the dedoc community, hundreds around the globe following right now, there's probably hundreds and hundreds more people with diabetes, but also people who couldn't make it here who are following this symposium. So also to everybody who is watching live, wherever you are in the world, whether it's early morning or late at night where you are, welcome to the dedoc symposium. Thank you for joining. With that, I will stop for a moment, hand over to Chantal Mathieu. One last reminder, if you have questions throughout the symposium, we will go through all 4 speakers. Please keep your questions to the very end. We will keep lots of time for Q&A and good discussions. So hold on to your questions. That also goes for everybody online. If you have questions, you can use the EASD platform. You can also post questions and comments in the comment section of Facebook Live or on YouTube. They're being collected by our social media team back in Berlin, and they will arrive right here, so we can hopefully get to answer questions. Just do us one favor, when you ask a question here in the auditorium, quickly introduce yourselves, and the same if you're asking a question on Facebook Live, YouTube, or on our website, please state where you're from. That's always good to know. And keep the questions short, because otherwise we will be here till late at night. Thank you, and Chantal, thank you for once again opening the dedoc symposium.
Thank you, Bastian. Thank you, Renza, and all the other dedoc voices for having me in your midst. I consider myself a dedoc voice, Bastian, because I voice dedoc a lot. So If you go back, dear friends, not farther than 10 years, imagine having a dedicated symposium in a scientific meeting like ESD by people living with diabetes, for people living with diabetes, and people living with diabetes raising their voices and saying, nothing about us without us. Imagine not longer than 10 years ago that a learned society like ESD would accept people with diabetes to be present when guidelines on how to treat people with diabetes, that their voice would be important. More even, that their voice would be guiding a society like ESD on the choice of guidelines. Imagine not longer than 10 years ago that a group of people living with diabetes united in an organization like dedoc would be commissioned to have the voice of people with diabetes formalized in everything an organization like ESD does. Not only in this guideline writing, but also not longer than yesterday in our board meeting, several board members said, we have to ask dedoc what are important topics for our e-learning for healthcare professionals. Imagine, dear friends, how the world has changed in 10 years. And it will change even more, because I can tell you that the European Union now has made it a rule that in every IHI program, so every program on research where industry and academia are working together, that there should be a voice of persons living with the disease that is being studied in that project. More even, IHI made a generic patient advisory committee. So it's not a surprise that an entity like inodia.org, and Anna will be talking about it, a platform of accredited centers that are clinical trial centers to facilitate and expedite new intervention trials in people with stage 3 T1D, but also early stage T1D, that they have a patient advisory committee, that they have a patient voice. So, dear friends, was dedoc the reason? No. But did dedoc catalyze all of this? I dare to say, at least in the field of diabetes, yes. I can tell you that when I came to the board of ESD many years ago, that 5 people with diabetes were allowed to attend the annual meeting on the condition that they would be silent and not interfere with the serious business ongoing. Then it changed. Then we gave them a booth. And now you have symposia, you advise and you guide ESD on where our education should go, on how our guidelines should be, on how the research should be. So, dear friends, dedoc and other organizations of persons living with diabetes who raise their voices and speak and tell us, the researchers, the clinicians, what matters for people with diabetes is crucial, and it will never go away again. Except perhaps when we cure type 1 and when we prevent type 1. Will we ever get there? I think so. We're now in a stage where we do have biomarkers in the blood of people that tell us when in type 1 diabetes the beta cell is under immune attack. So as you know, in many countries around the world, not only family members of people with type 1 diabetes are being screened whether they have early stage T1D, but also general population is being screened. And so I coordinate a project in Europe called Identify, and there's a booth in the hall if you want to visit us, where we're investigating how screening of the general population for presence of autoantibodies and thus early stage T1D should actually happen. It is happening. We're rolling this out, not only in Europe, but worldwide. And also there will be a consensus on how to screen for T1D. And there is already a consensus on how to monitor people who have early stage T1D. And you all know that we have the first disease-modifying therapy now in the market in many countries around the world, namely teplizumab. Teplizumab is able to delay the progression from stage 2 to stage 3 T1D by 2.5 to 3 years. And also, not only teplizumab, but several interventions of disease-modifying therapies in newly diagnosed clinical T1D, so in stage 3 T1D, have demonstrated that they're able to delay the further decay of the beta cell with a couple of months. But we're getting there. We are better and better understanding what therapies to choose. Combination therapies are now being evaluated. And again, a platform like Inodia will help us to accelerate these trials. But also, I get the question often, what about me, who lives with T1D? I've destroyed most of my beta cells. Any hope for me? I do think so. Here at the ESD, you will hear a late-breaking abstract being presented with embryonic stem cell-derived islet cells that are transplanted in people with pre-existing T1D under immune suppression. But the proof is that we can now make liters, kilos of beta cells. So the two big hurdles to islet transplantation to becoming the final solution for people living with type 1 diabetes, namely making enough islets, and on the other hand, immune suppression, at least one we seem to have tackled. Namely, we can now make islet cells. And imagine that these islet cells in the lab can be manipulated into becoming less appealing cells to be attacked by the immune system. And also, if these disease-modifying therapies can come into this islet transplantation field, together with encapsulation, we may see the cure of type 1 diabetes, or at least a completely different treatment of type 1 diabetes. Until then, we have our technologies that also become better and better, with AI soon entering into that domain, but still it remains a hassle. I'm sure we will hear some alarms during this symposium. Yay! So, you know, type 1 diabetes gets under your skin, even with all the new technologies. But we explicitly asked as ESD to dedoc, also to give a voice to people living with type 2 diabetes. People with type 1 are mostly quite vocal, but sometimes you're also a little bit racist. You say, I have type 1, I don't have type 2. And many of you say, you know, these type 2s, they ate too much, they didn't move enough. I have type 1. Also, people with type 2 don't choose to get type 2. There is a genetic predisposition. There is our environment in which we live. There is the way we choose foods that you don't determine. Put me in front of a buffet, I will select you every calorie-dense food there is. So it's high time that also there is a voice for people with type 2 diabetes. And very often, they're very silent in the background because there's a lot of shame, a lot of stigma involved. So You as a community of type 1s, lose your racism, and I don't want to insult you, but you know what I mean. Embrace also the type 2 community and teach them to raise their voices and guide us as scientific communities on how to also address their issues. And so we commissioned dedoc not only to provide us voices, to guide us in e-learning and in guidelines on type 1, but also on type 2 diabetes. And I hope you will deliver and give us a diverse set of voices to guide us. So dear friends, I talked too long. I know, I always overgo my time. Yes, I wanted to be here. I need to run to another session now, but I will be with you in the near future, Bastian and Renza. Thank you very much for having the symposium.
Chantal, as always, thank you very, very much. You have been a good ally, friend, and partner to dedoc from the very, very start. You have been trailblazing the way forward. And as she was just announcing, the fact that EASD now commissioned dedoc to help with a patient or lived experience advisory committee for EASD, for clinical guidelines, maybe for next conferences, is proof to that strengthening of the collaboration even further. And we just actually commissioned the first 5 type 2 dedoc voices to your staff who are writing the guidelines for type 2 and access to CGM. So we're starting the work already. We are very, very proud of these new developments. We are very proud that this year has been game-changing for us and that we received our first ever grant as dedoc by formerly JDRF, now Breakthrough T1D. We have entered into a strong collaboration with IDF Global. We have been working with IDF Europe for many years, but now also with IDF Global for World Diabetes Day, but also for the World Diabetes Conference happening next year in Bangkok, Thailand, where we will integrate our dedoc Voices Scholarship Program with their Young Leaders and Blue Circle Voices programs. That's also great news. We are also very happy that we've been able to partner with, in Germany, with Die Zeit, one of the leading newspaper in the country around World Diabetes Day and around a major conference. But this announcement by EASD, by Chantal Mathieu personally at her presidential address this morning, something we've been working on silently in the background for quite a while, is major news because it brings the lived experience to where it really matters, and that is alongside many of you working in the field as researchers, as doctors, as people in the policy field. And it's great that this is finally coming to a point where it's really going to make impact. And yes, we hope to bring more and more people with type 2 into this community as well. It is not as easy. So far, on a bit more than 80% of dedoc voices around the world are type 1 actually. But it is getting better. More than 80% means also that up to 20% or close to 20% are not type 1, and we hope that the relationship will change and we will be able to bring more and more type 2 voices to the forefront. There is one last slide I didn't want to forget. If you like what you are going to hear over the next hour, hour and a half, and you would like to learn more, there's a couple of dates that you might want to keep in mind. We have the dedoc reception tomorrow night in downtown Madrid. It is by invitation only, but you are here, if you care and if you want to meet and spend more time with dedoc voices, come find me after the panel or come find one of the dedoc voices and they will hand you an invitation. It would be great to see some of the attendees of EASD join us. Then we will have the next dedoc symposium in about a month at ISPAD in Lisbon. It will, again, if you are not planning to attend, it will be live streamed, so if you are liking this one and you would like to see another one, join us on dedoc.org or our Facebook and YouTube channels, and you can follow it from wherever you are. If you know of someone who would be, or who already is, a great diabetes advocate and would like to join this program, the dedoc Voices Scholarship and the dedoc Voices community, the call for applications, the next round, that is specifically geared towards ATTD, so the technology conference opens in November. That's for ATTD 2025 in Amsterdam. And then last not least, we are holding our signature event, double actually, in German and English on World Diabetes Day as every year. English global at 4 and in all over Germany for the whole country at 8 o'clock. Would be great if more and more people tune in now, especially that we collaborate with Die Zeit and IDF Global. With that, let's open the dedoc symposium, and it is my great honor to introduce again Anna, who will take it away, introduce herself and talk about lived experience and why and where it matters. Anna, your stage. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. So is it okay? Yeah. So I would first of all like to thank you, Bastian, for this great opportunity. What? I'm speaking now? Great. Here we go again, rewind. Thank you, Bastian. Thank you, Renza, for the invitation to be here. Thank you, everybody. I want to thank all the voices here, because this diabetes community is in the form of advocates and the healthcare teams and the researchers and everybody that supports us and encourages us to keep going and go farther. So it's a big thank you to all here. And I'm going to start talking about lived experience that everybody has mentioned so far quite a lot. You will all find yourselves in many of these pictures. Lived experience refers to the first-hand knowledge and personal understanding gained by individuals who have directly experienced a particular situation, condition, or circumstance. That's the dictionary definition. In the context of diabetes, lived experience comprises the unique insights of people living with the disease, and their unique insights and perspectives, regardless of the type of diabetes. So it's type 1, type 2, type F, we all know that. And this includes our daily challenges, coping strategies, and interactions with different healthcare systems. See if I can move to the next one. Yes. Lived experience in diabetes is invaluable, as it provides a deeper understanding of the real-world implications and complexities of the disease. It can inform research, policy making, and services development by identifying unmet needs, improving patient-centered care, and enhancing research relevance. How can this be done? People with lived experience can help pinpoint gaps in healthcare services, treatments, or supports that may not be evident to healthcare professionals or researchers. By highlighting personal experiences, individuals with lived experience can guide healthcare providers and researchers, again, in delivering more compassionate, patient-centered care. Involving individuals with lived experience in research can help ensure that studies address meaningful questions and produce practical, applicable results. And this is where Inodia comes in. Inodia is a non-profit organization that provides research services, acting as the interface between those who want to develop new therapies for preventing and curing type 1 diabetes, and those who have the tools and the expertise to do so, and thus accelerate the development of disease-modifying therapies through a network of excellence. Disclosure, I do work for Inodia, so this is what we do. By integrating lived experience into diabetes research, we can enhance its relevance, impact, and potential for improving the lives of those affected by the disease. Inodia's mission is to make every effort to facilitate the development of new cures and promote disease-modifying therapies for people living with type 1 diabetes, everywhere. And Inodia has a very interesting working model because it comprises its members, that is clinical trial sites, research labs, reference labs, patient associations, its partners, which are entities that share Inodia's mission and vision, expert professionals, of course, in their own fields, and the certified impact associates. That is, people living with type 1 diabetes, the little man there, person. These stakeholders together work to meet medicine developers' needs and provide expert advice to make crucial decisions, assist in access to centers of excellence, provide preferred access to top-level technology and services, and last but not least, gain the perspective and opinions of a community of people with diabetes who have a clear understanding of the medicine development process. This community is IMPACT, Inodia people living with type 1 diabetes. Inodia aims to provide adequate support to medicine developers in the field of disease-modifying therapies, in the design of patient-centric products that meet the needs of people with diabetes. And this community of people and families, of course, living with type 1 diabetes, that is a broad group of people and representing all possible ages, ages of disease onset, ethnicities, genders, types of disease management, nationalities, and countries of residence. This is at the heart of Inodia, as we know that lived experience and the voice of people living with diabetes should be at the core of research activities. We aim at ensuring that this voice is heard. So going back to the very beginning of this presentation, talking about lived experience of people with diabetes, we know that lived experience of people with living with diabetes is increasingly being recognized as a valuable and significant contribution to research, medicine development, and diabetes treatment. This acknowledgement marks a shift towards patient-centered approaches that prioritize the real-world insights of people with diabetes. However, it is also essential to ensure that our contributions as people with diabetes are both meaningful and well-informed. By combining lived experience with comprehensive knowledge and expertise, we can develop a more effective and relevant approach that ensures that the voices of people with diabetes not only shape, but also enrich the entire process of research and medicine development. Oops, how would I go back? Yeah. To achieve this, Inodia has created the Impact Certification Program. By offering basic and extended knowledge, as well as objective evaluation, this program ensures that the voice of people with diabetes are not only heard, but are also well-informed and impactful. And it's the training module, I'm calling it off, has a first-level certification program. That's, there are several certified impact associates here in the room, so they know this is a very easy to do thing that, yes it is, that teaches us a lot. It gives us the common ground to work. The first month of the launch, we had a large number of candidates, and at this point, 15 weeks into the program, over 30 people have become certified associates, a large number being also dedoc voices, which brings additional experiences and knowledge because of the dedoc scholarship program. I'm just rounding up. All I want to say is that contributions are in many, many shapes, and the thing is, the important thing here is that there's a whole gamut, but that, impact associates are considered experts in their field, and their contributions are recognized as such, experts in lived experience. And this is how we select people, all the units working together. We select people that will be perfect matches to the requirements of the services to be provided, and even if not selected, impact associates will have continued access to continued learning in the different parts. So that's it. Sorry, I know I'm running over time. Sorry. So thank you all, and those are my contact. That's my contact information.
Thank you, Anna. And I'm sorry, hi everybody, I'm Renza Shabilia and I am the timekeeper of doom. So let that be a warning to the other speakers. Please, if you do have questions, hold on to them to the end. We will be having a panel discussion and we very much would love your contributions and your questions at that time. Okay, now, our next speaker is Deeksha. Would you like to take the stage and you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to do your presentation. Thank you very, very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Deeksha and I have been living with type 1 diabetes for the last 24 years. I am a counseling psychologist, so I have 4 passions in life and I'm going to talk about all of them today. Family, type 1 diabetes, mental health, and community. So today I'm talking about navigating type 1 diabetes together, family systems, which is not talked enough about, since I understand that as a person living with type 1 diabetes, I get impacted, but we forget that the entire family also gets impacted. Family members, siblings, parents, everybody. And how community builds that connections into ensuring that the anxiety and stress that a family goes through is alleviated. So I'm going to tell you a story about Deeksha, who got diagnosed when she was 3.5 years, and that's a brother, mother, and father. And her diagnosis was a shock to the entire family. There was ripples in the family system. So family, if I have to put it in psychological terms, is an emotional unit, where each family member influences each other to some degree. So if you can see the arrows, everyone is influencing everyone. So Deeksha is influencing her mother, her father, her brother, and everyone is basically getting influenced by her diagnosis. And we need to understand that my diagnosis, or wait, Deeksha's diagnosis, let me correct myself here, was something which it did not come in isolation. It was just not Deeksha who got impacted. It was her mother and father, her brother. So members of a family can't live in isolation. That means that everyone gets impacted. And in a survey that I conducted with 58 participants, one thing that we realized was that change in one person's behavior, which was, in Deeksha's case, her diagnosis, triggers reciprocal shifts in others' behaviors. Which means that her parents, who had a sweet tooth, apparently had to leave all the sweets behind because of her diagnosis. Because 70.7% of families that we surveyed said that their child's type 1 diabetes diagnosis changed how they manage daily life and interact with others. So the entire narrative basically starts roaming around the child who got diagnosed. I am going to tell you a very short story. I'm going to halt here. That Deeksha's brother, who is 5 years elder to him, apparently one day during an argument, while he is 30 years old now, argued, and is, mind that, very, very nice, understanding about her condition, just felt defeated and told his parents that, you know what, this child has been the center of attention all the time. So there's a shift in narrative of how you actually look at things. Everything just becomes secondary. The child's diagnosis becomes the primary thing. And 80% of families, as I said, reported that their child's diabetes impacts the entire household. From changes in eating habits, sweet tooth, all gone. Carbs, mostly all gone. And there's a shared anxiety over sugar levels, because I've seen Deeksha's parents going and panicking initially about her hypos and hypers. And as I was talking about narratives, the narratives in South Asian households changes completely, and I am sure Anum and Nupur would agree with me that it just talks about, it becomes like, how is this child going to get married? Deeksha was 3.5 years old, that should not be the first question. What about higher education? Who is going to give her a job? Should we send her to the school picnic? Everything basically shifts from a very cool, breezy family situation into a very anxiety-provoking, stressful situation. And as I said, family members, although they get anxious, they get, they strengthen their bond because of the trauma, apparently, that comes with a condition. But the anxiety spreads across everyone else, and anxiety is contagious. Even if you don't tell anyone that you're going through something, people can feel it. 69% of families feel that their immediate extended family members are anxious about their child. So Deeksha's relatives, the first question that was asked in any social gathering was, how is your child going to get married? Do you think that's the right thing for her to eat? When is she going to get cured? And as the anxiety goes up, of course, such questions would, provoke anxiety in anyone. The emotional connectedness, although it strengthens of the family members, but it becomes more stressful than comforting. And 89.7% of families found that joining a type 1 diabetes community ease their anxiety about the child's diagnosis. So I am going to tell you about and introduce you guys to a concept in family systems theory called triangulation. Triangulation is basically a process that occurs when a third person is introduced in a dyadic relationship. Dyadic means, dyadic means when there are two people involved. And this relationship is to be balanced, the conflict of balance of conflict or distance is provided stability by this third person or the party. And in this case, that's the type 1 diabetes community. Deeksha did not have any kind of access to a type 1 diabetes for 18 years of her diagnosis. So a person living with type 1 diabetes and the family, because they're already in a stressful situation, if a type 1 diabetes community is put into a position, into that place of the third part as that triangle, we have seen the anxiety is alleviated, and the statistics say that as well. 91.6% of families said that meeting others in the community made their family feel supported. And here are some testimonials. When my kid was diagnosed, I felt that my world stopped. I'm a single parent. It felt even worse for me as there was the stigma associated with type 1 diabetes, since no one really understood what type 1 diabetes is. I was browsing through social media about type 1 diabetes when I stumbled across Diabesties. That's the foundation that I work with. I got the feeling of belongingness, and it's just not me or my kid alone. I got to know what to anticipate and be prepared for hypos, food habits, how we can lead a healthy life, and most importantly, someone or for us, a whole group to relate to. Connecting with type 1 diabetes community has helped us in having better knowledge, awareness, and a feeling of not being left out, which I think most of us have felt living with diabetes at some point of time, and getting much needed support. And sharing is caring. I was very depressed and lost. Connecting with others helped me emotionally and also helped me to believe that it is not impossible to manage. It really helps in sharing mutual feelings and lightens my heart. And this is the community that I work in with at Punjab, where I live. And this community has given me 3 gems. Those are 3 of my best friends who live with type 1 diabetes. That's Ankur, Vanshika, and Sanjana. And Sanjana has also designed this very cutesy deck. So this is the present that you get when you join a community. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Deeksha. The power of peer support, it is just so, so powerful. Thank you so much for your presentation. And again, if you do have any questions, and I certainly hope you do, please hold them till the end. Our next speaker is Laura Moreno Belmonte from Italy, and she is going to speak about pregnancy and type 1 diabetes. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Renza. Thank you, Bastian. Very grateful to be here. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Laura, and I'm thrilled to be in the city where I was born, performing my first presentation ever at the dedoc symposium. Over the next few minutes, I'll share my personal experience with pregnancy and type 1 diabetes, and I will give you an insight into the national healthcare system in my country, which is Italy, where I live, related to pregnancy and diabetes clinics. Before I dive into my personal journey, let me first introduce myself. I was born and raised here in Madrid, but moved to Milan 10 years ago. Of course, an Italian man stole my heart. I've been living with type 1D for 30 years now. I'm very passionate about technology, sports, and most importantly, I'm a proud mom to my daughter, Elena. And I'm a diabetes advocate and a content creator. So now that you know a bit about me, let me take you through a very important chapter of my life, my pregnancy while managing type 1 diabetes. During that time, I was very fortunate to be under the care of a specialized team at San Raffaele Hospital in Milan. So with bi-monthly appointments involving my gynecologist, endocrinologist, and nutritionist, every aspect of my care was meticulously managed. It was a long and exhausting journey, but thanks to the team's dedication, I always felt secure and supported. And I truly experienced a journey of trust and care. I really felt I was in safe hands, and you all agree with me that every woman with type 1 diabetes who gets pregnant deserves to feel this way too. So while my experience was very positive, it's important to recognize the history behind diabetes care in pregnancy, which has shaped the way we receive care today. So I've done my research and consulted with some experts in the field. So thank you, Marina and Amelia, both doctors at San Raffaele Hospital in Milan. Some of you may already know Priscilla White, born in the 1900s in the US. She was a pioneer in treating diabetes during pregnancy. Her work started right after insulin was discovered in 1922, improving outcomes for mothers and their babies. A few years later, Lois Jovanovic demonstrated that women with diabetes could have the same chances of having healthy babies as those without diabetes if they keep their blood sugar levels close to normal before and during pregnancy. And then arriving to Italy in the 60s, Dr. Luigi Rovati recommended hospitalization for women with type 1 diabetes to ensure more accurate monitoring of their blood sugar levels during the whole pregnancy. So long before CGMs were invented, or even test strips or lancets were available, based on a blood sample, every day he incremented the dose of insulin by 1 unit if the mom-to-be had high blood sugar, or decreased it by 1 unit if she was low. And then he repeated this process every day for 9 months. So it was clear that women with type 1 diabetes at that point during pregnancy it was clear that they needed to be monitored regularly. As I said before, I consider myself really lucky to have had such a good team by my side during my pregnancy, but I am aware that this isn't the case everywhere in Italy, across Europe, or around the world. So let's look at what's happening today in Italy regarding pregnancy and diabetes care. The situation has evolved so much in the past years, but there's still some challenges. These are some of the cities in Italy where multidisciplinary clinics are present. They follow, of course, ADA and EASD guidelines, helping hundreds of women with diabetes every year. The clinic, when I received my care, was founded in 1988, and today it helps many women with type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. So unfortunately, there is no official register of diabetes and pregnancy clinics in Italy. And the presence or absence of such a clinic within a hospital is at the discretion of individual facilities. So if a woman with type 1 diabetes gets pregnant and she lives in a city with no such clinic, she could need to travel back and forth or book separate appointments with both gynecologists and endocrinologists. And in any case, this would be a very time-consuming and non-optimal solution. So regardless of the situation, a pregnancy with diabetes is possible, thanks to Priscilla White, Lois Jovanovic, Luigi Rovati, and many others. It's just a full-time job. But I think it's important to share our experiences and raise awareness. So I'd love to know what's the situation in your country. So if you like, please reach out. So here's a QR code you can scan to connect with me. I would love to get to know you and enlarge the amazing community that we are. Being an advocate, I've always thought that it's very important to talk about my diabetes journey and then my pregnancy journey, because we don't know how many people are on the other side of the screen living the same things as we are. So I decided to share part of that journey and you know, my ups and downs, sometimes even my diet, how I exercised at the moment while my belly was getting bigger and bigger. And it got me connected to many people, to a great network of people. Many of them, I can call them friends right now. So yeah, that's all from my side. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your attention. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Laura. One of the most incredibly powerful aspects of community is storytelling and story sharing. So thank you for sharing your story there. Okay, we're very excited now to introduce our dedoc artist in residence, and that is Taylor Lawrence, who is going to talk about art and advocacy. Such a powerful tool. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Taylor, thank you.
Hey, hey. I'm not as slick as the ladies' presentation, so little possible patience. Thank you, Bastian. Thank you, Bastian, and thank you, Resna. I'm glad you didn't hear that last comment. My name is Taylor Lawrence. I want to thank you guys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here on the 60th anniversary of the ESAD. I am Taylor Lawrence. I go by Appleton, my grandmother's maiden name, and my middle name. I am an artist, a street artist, whose mission is nothing but diabetes awareness. And like many of you here today, I am a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed at 6 years old. And when I say diagnosed, I mean I went into a DKA coma and languished in and out of consciousness for days with sugars running into the thousands. A day earlier, my mother and I had been told by a doctor that I just had the common cold, you know, bad flu, drink fluids. But he couldn't explain the sudden weight loss. Hours after getting home, a day later, my condition worsening, in and out of consciousness, as I said, my mother would realize exactly what was happening with me. Sadly, years earlier, before I was born, my sister Beezy would die in her arms of unrecognized diabetes. She would get the same diagnosis that I had, just the flu, little dehydration, nothing to worry about. But it really, she had, diabetes was masquerading as the common cold, as it does. It would be diabetes in disguise that took my sister's life. This was decades ago, and yet diabetes still takes the lives of little ones around the world. Children who are too young for type 1. In fact, we're all too young for type 1. Statistics show that there's over 500 million people worldwide with some form of diabetes, type 1, 2, 3 family. And if one of those 500 million people worldwide with diabetes had 1, 2, 3 friends, as Deeksha says, your family, that would bring the amount of people to 2 billion who are affected daily by diabetes. It's insane. I mean, that's 1/8 of the world's population that deals with diabetes daily. I have other words for that. Being an artist and a diabetic, it would only be a matter of time before the two would merge. My hope is to let diabetic passersby see my artwork and know they are not alone, that we are a gang with street art marked territory, that hoping that people who passerbys feel less alone. We are strapped with CGMs and pumps, just like gang tattoos, all the telltale signs that only diabetics really recognize. And I forgot this as we go through, so forgive me. That's me in disguise before I used to want to publicize my image. My art comes from lived experience. There's your guy who went into a coma at 6 years old. Here is the act. I think my friend Brendan, this was the building that you saw the music video from. With all that many of us do out here, all of you, I feel like we're diabetic by design. At least I feel diabetic by design for a reason. My work, I've been told, is inspiring, uplifting, and at other times considered disturbing and heavy. We're all too young for type 1. I prefer inspiring and uplifting. A couple stories come to mind that confirm my hopes and wish for diabetics to feel less alone and part of something bigger. My art and my diabetes would merge daily. A woman I met at an opening of mine would later confide in me that she had enough. The highs and the lows were just too much to handle. She was at her wit's end. Very depressed on her way to work one day, she would come across a huge, colorful insulin bottle. Suddenly elated, she realized that it was not Madrid, that it was not an advertisement, but the work of some artist. Confessing that it made her day, seeing it now every day on her way to work, she felt less alone and more inspired to beat diabetes. I make bottles for everyone, everywhere, in every city, state, and country to let us all, again, feel part of a bigger place, bigger community. Alternately, another story that lifts me up. My friend's daughter was diagnosed with type 1, and she had been bullied at school. Now it's a much bigger deal than I was a kid. The whole classroom stops, apparently, and it becomes the attention of everybody in the room. So she was bullied for this special attention and little candies that she ate. After my friend told me about his daughter's situation, I would go out that night with my trusty German Shepherd and we'd paste insulin bottles along the route to her school that they took every day. Weeks later, I would see both of them in the neighborhood, both knowing that I was an artist and a diabetic. My friend's daughter would ask if I knew about it, and he was curious, do I know this person? And I slowly smiled, and she pointed her finger in my face and said, I knew it was you. I'm very happy to say she has turned her bullying situation around. It's now a confident young artist herself. I will walk through the speedy images to come. As you can see, that's a California license plate I've put inside a bottle. This is my little friend, little girl blue, I call her. You can see the Union Jack of the UK. Our friends in France, our friends in Japan, Germany, and someday we'll have freedom from our insulin bondage. She's got to have it, insulin that is. Oh, the original, you cannot see my German Shepherds below. I have a funny thing with the friends in Big Pharma who never seem to sleep. The Tin Man is a favorite of mine. I've decided that the Tin Man has type 1, and that Oz should have given him a pancreas, when we all know he really had a big heart anyways. This is, please reach out, don't ration. There's plenty of people who need insulin in the world who can't afford the super cool gadgets that we all have. Remember that. I've decided to make my own insulin when insulin prices went up. This is black market insulin. You see my friend in the background with a syringe in his teeth. My Korean friends, of course. It's a daily battle, as we all know. Where do you store your insulin? That's on a billboard. It takes a little while to get up to the roof of a building, and you should do it at 6 a.m. MPH, U100, anyone remember those guys? Older bottles. This is in Los Angeles on Fairfax, not far from La Cienega. 17th Street in New York, I covered that whole front window, there's my German Shepherd, to produce this, which I entitled All Broken Up. I mentioned to a friend earlier, it's the only one I've ever signed in public. There's your friend, who has decided that some people don't want to listen to us. Speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. This is for Lisbon a few years ago. This is in France, in Cannes, in Nice. This was put up and painted over, and I had the pleasure of somebody stealing it after they painted over it. That shark right there many years ago in Cannes. Somebody's got the seeds to the insulin tree, and I wish we all did. This is about getting back to a bolus, handling a reaction that comes too fast on you. You'll see what diabetes does to people over years. That bottle still survived on the streets, but that's what it looks like after years. The price of insulin, I know this isn't a caviar, but it reminds me that the price of insulin is expensive as caviar. And very sad, friends give me insulin once in a while. I'm an uninsured diabetic. I've survived this long. But I'm very sad that a friend of mine was able to give me 20 bottles of Humalog. I thought that was insane. And where did she get it? All through her insurance. And sadly enough, 10 of the bottles that she'd given me were expired and I couldn't use. And I thought, what a crime when other people are reaching out for it. So much insulin, I imagine, is in landfills. It's a factory where insulin comes by the railroad, by the truckload. Again, we're too young. That's how long I've had diabetes. I understand that diabetes takes a certain number of years from us. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard it takes 10 years off your life and longer. Freedom again and living with diabetes daily by a thread. We know some people try not to die every day. I know there's a lot of positive diabetics, a lot of cynical diabetics, but it's a tough 24 hours sometimes. A little blurry, my boy right there, but there's me and my German Shepherds flying to somehow make it a coat of arms. He traded in the axe for a syringe. There's my guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. There's something quite incredible if you're walking down the streets and you actually look up and you see one of your artworks. It is truly, truly remarkable. Did you just stick something? I thought he just stuck something on my back. It's like a... All right. That brings us to the end of our formal presentations, but we certainly would love some questions from the audience and from people at home. We can see that there are people watching at home and we can see all your comments, which are lovely, but please do ask any questions as well if you have any. If you have a question, there are microphones down the back. I can't actually see. Is that... Yes, there is somebody there. Hello.
Hi,
Reza, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Reza Zaidi from Liverpool. That's brilliant. I have two questions, but before that, I'll just ask Taylor, are you the new Banksy?
Yeah. Diabetes Banksy.
So my first question really was, and it's a question I've asked at ISPAD recently as well, I think. I didn't get a proper answer, but this is to everyone there. How does peer support not turn into peer pressure is the first question.
That's a great question. How does peer support not turn into peer pressure? So that's a really, does anyone want to have a go at that? Yeah? Yeah, so do you want to have a go and then we can have a chat about this, because I think that this is a really, this is a really good one. Go. Oh, hang on, you need to speak into a microphone though. Taylor wants to say something. Technology, we're very good at it here. Okay. Then Taylor.
Okay. Is it on?
Yeah.
Peer pressure and peer support, right? It work both ways. Because sometimes peer pressure, it makes us do things right, and sometimes it just makes us go into ourselves, hide under a shell, and that's when it has a negative effect, that peer support brings us out again and makes us thrive, and there I have it, be ourselves and survive. Most of us have found peer supports in the diabetes online community in all its different forms, and for many of us it has been a saving hand. Hadn't it been for that, I think I wouldn't, to begin with, and many of us would not be here.
Taylor, did you want to add something to that?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When growing up, there was always the better diabetic. There's the one who was the happy-go-lucky diabetic and had the unicorn days where it's nothing but 100 for 24 hours. And that always made me feel like I was judging myself and my performance, and somebody tried to inspire you, hey, you gotta do this, this, and this, and people's metabolic systems are different, you can't have the best days. So sometimes that peer pressure is, hey, thanks, I appreciate it, now stop, because it's making me feel worse. It's making me feel like a bad diabetic, not necessarily inspiring. I believe it helps, it's a beautiful thing, but there is a weight when you're the patient and the caregiver. So at the end of the day, you're wondering how you felt, and then who do you look to? Oh, you're the guy who ate too much, you're the guy who didn't take enough insulin. So the judgment is heavy. Then when somebody who's got $1 million gadgets and everything's all hooked up and they're showing you money all day, it can help. It can help you to aspire to be that diabetic. But a lot of diabetics might not want to admit it, but it's heavy. And it's, I read recently that the average person has 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. The average diabetic has 100,000. And a friend found that really hard to believe. I said, you have no idea the amount of decisions we have to make right when we get out of bed for the rest of the day. You plan your whole day. And all those thoughts get pretty heavy. And no one wants to listen. And when you explain it to a a diabetic who's really under control, all you get is the, well, keep up the good work. And with that I say, do keep up the good work and try to be positive, because we all know it's a full-time job.
Yep. Deeksha, did you want to add something?
Yeah. I also just want to add that it also depends on how you convey it, right? I can vouch for all the advocates who are sitting in this room that what Anna said, I resonate with it, that for us, community has been the saving grace. A lot of us, I mean, the idealism that we bring on table is not about how perfect we are when it comes to our diabetes. It talks about how we are managing it despite of all the odds that life throws at us. So I think it comes, what I want to say is, it's very nuanced. It's, again, reiterating what I said, it's how you convey it. If it's conveyed in the right way, I don't think so it is going to turn into peer pressure at all. It will remain it will remain what it is, peer support ultimately.
Did that answer your question?
Pretty much so. I think I was looking at ways to sort of see how you could facilitate and moderate peer support groups, really, isn't it? That would be crucial in ensuring peer support doesn't turn into peer pressure as well. I guess that's probably the additional vital aspect. The second question really I had was a very quick one. We've got a global perspective here. Do you have any positive stories from employers, how they've helped you at work with your type 1 diabetes? Really, we hear all sorts of perspectives, all sorts of ignorant comments and, things that how people haven't been supported, but are there any positive stories?
So positive experiences in the workplace, so how your employer may have made diabetes easier for you. And Deeksha, let's hear from you, considering you work in a diabetes organisation. So, because I really hope that you've got lots of positive stories to share.
Yeah, so actually, first of all, I have been very privileged to work with people who are living with type 1 diabetes. So if we are having a hypo, I can just type in that I am having a hypo and get out of the meeting. But apart from that, we worked on something called a workplace resource. If you saw on the screen Ankur Mukherjee, he was very instrumental. He was the brains behind it. And we got to know that people actually had great experiences at workplace. The thing is, most of us do not want to disclose it either at the workplace because of the kind of policies they have. But I mean, you have to fiercely advocate for yourself ultimately, don't you? But if you do, and people, they understand what type 1 diabetes is about and what are your requirements, which I believe when it comes to other people is very minimal. All we need is assistance when it comes to hypos, letting us eat during hypos, and letting us use the washroom during hypos, and maybe taking a break in between because you might have a brain fog because of both the conditions. I think that's more or less it, which people have to, the workplace has to accommodate. So that should not be an issue at all. But if you want to make your workplace slightly more friendlier for people living with diabetes, you can go to the Diabetes Foundation. There's something called the Workplace Resource. Renza has edited it, and you can just present that copy to your employer. It's easy as that. At least I make it sound like that. I know it's easier said than done, but advocate fiercely for yourself. But we have had very good positive experiences at workplace when you are advocating for yourself.
Laura, did you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, well, all of my life, in all of my working years, which have been like 10 years or something, I've always said to my employee and my colleagues that I have diabetes. So for me, it's been always natural. Like, I have a hypo, I need to eat. For me, there's no option. So I always try to be comfortable where I am. So all of my colleagues have always known that I was living with type 1 diabetes. So if I need a minute or 10, I mean, my health is more important. So I like to be transparent in that case. So yeah, like you were saying, advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Camille, I'm so sorry. If you're asking questions, can you use this microphone here? Because that light is... Oh, that's better. Camille, hello.
Hi, great presentation, thank you. I wanted to ask about the racism with type 2 point that was raised earlier. So, yeah, I think there's been a lot of segregation in the community when it comes to that, and I wanted to hear your perspective on how we can address that. So, to rephrase the name of your session, what you wish we knew about type 2 diabetes and how dedoc has managed to engage with the type 2 community and what we can learn from that. That's a question to you and the panel.
So we are going to have a go at that, but I will point out there's no one on this stage right here with type 2 diabetes, and speaking for the type 2 diabetes community is not great at all, so perhaps if we can, but this is a very important issue. I don't use racist, I use typist. I think that it's a typist situation, if you like. So perhaps if I could ask the question to the community, as people with type 1, what is it that we can do to really reduce that stigma, that typism? I'm totally making words up now, it's not okay, but this typism, and be supportive. And I'm really curious to hear what people would like to say and share about that. Also, while we're handing microphones around, if you haven't signed the pledge to end diabetes stigma, you should do it now by going to enddiabetesstigma.org. Sign the pledge, it'll take you 30 seconds. Okay, Anna.
Typism.
Typism.
I like the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I like it. I think we should, Chantal mentioned it, we should not, first of all, say, whenever somebody's talking about diabetes, say, but I'm a type 1. So that doesn't apply to me. As a type 1, that is very important that we do. We all, type 1s and type 2s, and all the other types in between, should be aware that we share a lot of characteristics and a lot of resources and coping mechanisms, but they are different diseases. So we have to be aware of the differences, to join forces and say, we need basic things that are the same for all: access, technology, medication, education. For me, I should have started with education first of all. And, well, let's share and let's advocate not only for ourselves, but for everybody with diabetes, regardless of the type.
Who wants to add to that? No one. Okay, can I add to it just for a little bit? Just for, do you want to, no, go louder. You go.
I was just about to say, from my point of view, as a type 1, I've never studied for good what type 2 means. So that's what I'm doing in the past months. Like I'm taking courses, I'm learning about type 2 because I want to learn how type 2 works and meet other people with type 2 because I haven't met so many people. I know here in the Congress there are many type 2 voices, but not so many. So that's the thing. I mean, we need to meet other type 2, engage ourselves, I mean, get to know each other and learn to, I don't know, I can work, I can speak right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think
education is base, and then all will flow along. Yeah.
I mean,
we should also educate the press.
Yeah.
That's the way to begin, because that's when we say, but I'm a type 1. That doesn't apply to me.
Yeah. So I think that there are there's a lot to unpack here, and this is a whole separate session, really. It actually is. We'll just note that down for the next symposium. But there are a couple of things that I just want to say about this, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this with stigma work. But I'm just going to tell a very quick little story. Earlier this year, I was involved in an advocacy project in Australia that was only to do with type 1 diabetes, because that was what it was relevant to. And I had some fingers pointed at me and accusations made that I was being typist and that I didn't care about people with type 2 diabetes and that I should be supporting a parallel project to do with type 2 diabetes. Now, the problem with that is I don't have type 2 diabetes. I was very happy to lend my hand to the type 1 project because that's where my expertise is, and we pulled together a group of people directly impacted by type 1 or experts in that, because that's what we deserve as people with type 1. So do people with type 2 diabetes. They deserve the expertise to be leading projects and to be surrounded by the health professionals who work in this area. So I think that it's a very multifaceted idea where we need to really find the great advocates to lead these projects and then to support them. I think that as people with type 1, or as a person with type 1 diabetes, I want to support that work. I will never lead it because I am not a person with type 2 diabetes. I can't speak to that experience, but I promise you that I will support whatever you are doing. That is how our community is stronger, when we support each other. But I think if we're expecting people with type 1 diabetes to be the ones who are leading projects for type 2, come on. That is just another form of stigma, and it's another way of stifling the voices of people with type 2 diabetes. Let's not do that. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to say that I think it's very sad because type 2 diabetics, they get the blame on themselves, and type 1 is just a genetic thing that happens. So the press kind of builds up that people who don't care about themselves or don't take care of themselves or in communities where fresh food isn't available, what do they call those, desert areas of food. But the negativity of these people that have brought it on themselves, and you hear about it from terribly uneducated people who judge type 2 diabetics. Oh, you didn't take care of yourself. Who knows what happens with your system and when one organ wants to fail or not with whatever you do. And metabolic judgment shouldn't happen with people who gain weight. I'm flacco. I couldn't gain a pound if you paid me. And that people like, oh, you're diabetic, and then the complete misunderstanding that they have of the whole thing. So I think it's the weight that people put on it, the blame that type 2 diabetics carry, without saying, hey, it happened to me genetically, or it happened to me some other way that diabetes comes to people. But I'm sorry that people feel that way, that type 2 is, that it actually is a typism.
Yeah. Please continue to ask questions and take a step up. Actually, I was going to throw to Bastian, but you know what? I'm not. I'm going to throw to you, Mark, because I would really like to hear what you have to say right now.
To diabetic, I have suffered from the stigma from type 1s. I have been told by type 1s, you have it easy. And I assure you, I don't. Treat type 2s with respect. And the conditions aren't the same, as Anna pointed out. But that doesn't mean they're any less serious. And no type 2 chooses.
That's right. Thank you, Mark.
Diabetes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one chooses diabetes. No one chooses diabetes. Okay, Bastian, we have a question.
Yes, but before that, I think we should note that down. And Mark, maybe we should make a point out of next year's EASD, this panel, you should be here and we'll have a type 2 panel. Because to Camille's question, what can we do about this type 1 versus type 2, typism, etc. While I think everything that was said here is perfectly right, that I have type 1 myself, you have type 1, everybody right now up here has type 1. We've had panels where that was more mixed. Yeah. And I think it is right that we cannot speak on your behalf or for you. But what at least we as dedoc can do is to use the power of the community and of the platform that we have and bring you up here. So I promise you that we will do more. We have 80% of our community, as I said before, type 1s. About 20% type 2s. We are working on that, but it is hard. It's also hard because we have to acknowledge that this stigma is around. There's, tying that to the first question about employment, I come from a business school, and when I had type 1 and we were going through assessment centers, I said, you know, when I go into an assessment center, instead of thinking about should I disclose my type 1 diabetes, I should actually go into an assessment center and say, well, my first strength is I have diabetes, that's my superpower. And in type 1, we've kind of come to a place where that works. I can imagine that it's very, very hard to do that in type 2. So there is a different form of stigma that exists, and there's a long way to go. But we're working with you and with people like you, and we want to bring you up here and at least help. We can't speak on your behalf, but help. There is questions from the audience. There's a lot of comments we have that are not really questions, but they're from all over the world. I'm not going to go through all the countries. There is a question here from Emma. Emma is a dedoc voice. She's also the patient editor for the BMJ, the British Medical Journal. I'm just going to read it out. At the BMJ, we are seeing more and more researchers recognizing the importance and the value of including people with lived experience, but I feel we are a long way off in having policymakers, pharma and tech companies and medical journals really acknowledging the value of lived experience consistently in their work. How do we, as the diabetes community, change this?
Okay, so who would like to take that? How do we as the diabetes community change that, you know, the acknowledgement of how valuable and important lived experience is to all stakeholders in the diabetes world? Who wants to go first? Let's see if we can, one idea each. Deeksha? No, Anna?
No, I will. It's on the, I'm sorry, but it's very difficult to hear what's going on somewhere else from this position. So, well, we do it one tiny little step at a time. And my personal experience, we are working on that at Inodia. It's extremely important. It's the core, at the core of everything we do, that the voice of the people with diabetes is present and is heard. We sometimes need it to be listened to, which is slightly different, but we're working on it. So it's, if we can do it, everybody can do it afterwards in their own spheres of action. It's a long, winding road that we are walking down, but it is there. We're doing it. Everybody here in the dedoc community is doing exactly the same.
Yep. Deeksha?
Change is a very gradual process, and it's taken with a lot of resistance. We are here. We are being heard. That's a big step. Again, what Anna just said, I completely resonate with that. It's baby steps, but we have to, again, what I said, we have to advocate fiercely for us at every possible stage, at conferences, at workplaces, at homes as well. Sometimes, you know, families can be difficult. But it's one step at a time, and we need to also understand that every step matters. Every little thing that you take, every little step that you take towards advocating for yourself is also a step that you're taking towards advocating for so many like you. So just make your voice heard.
Yep. Anybody want to, you know? Yes, go. Go, Taylor.
I was going to say that I think lived experience is the most valuable information any disease, any product, anything can needs. From the perspective, we've all broken insulin bottles, so that has created, we've mentioned that experience in our lives. Someone's now made a protective case. Everything we do, all cases, protective things, all come from our experience saying, hey, this happened to us. Now someone's made a product from it. So the lived experience goes, we're all guinea pigs at a certain point. You figure out what your dose is, you figure out what your meals are, and then you give all that information to other people. I was at a conference in November, and half the people there were not diabetic. And it's taken me years to kind of go, it's so bizarre to me
like not to have an endocrinologist who's a type 1 himself, so that you both can talk about the lived experience. So I feel like the research that that all these companies and big pharma derives really does come from somebody who's like, hey, just so you know, I went across the country in a car and I lost this and I needed these resources, and I tried to go to a hospital and had this experience. All of that really just comes from us. When I found people who are not diabetic talking to me, I felt a little disconnected. And I must say, a little like profanity comes to mind, but you don't know. You are in it for your kids, the house you just bought. Your heart's in it. Yes, it's a beautiful thing, but it still was very separate from speaking to people who have lived experience to other people who have lived it. So it's a very interesting thing I think it's very important. It's almost, I think it dominates everything else. That people come to mind, oh, I haven't thought about that. Why? Because you're not type 1. So.
Got a question? Yeah.
My name is Brandon A. Denson. I'm here on behalf of dedoc Scholarship, so I just want to say that, put that out there. My question is for Taylor. I actually have a couple questions. One, I know where that billboard is on Fairfax. How long did it take you to paint that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, dude.
How long does it take you to...
The billboard that you put on Fairfax, I know where that's at. How long did it actually take you to paint that?
It wasn't a painting.
Into your mic.
It wasn't a painting. It's quite a process, but I blow up my work and I paint over it. So those were about 4 or 5 feet tall, 14 of them in a roll. Don't do it that way, that you get covered that way. I prefer this wallpaper glue. That seems to stay longer. But that was about 6:30 in the morning. I had a show across the street. So I was very glad that people would come to the show and they could see this billboard and go, how the hell did, why do you have a billboard across from the show? But probably took about an hour. I had a friend down the street who was very nervous about police. Had a lot of fun doing it. It's kind of like parkour. But yeah, about an hour. And, you don't even think about what you're doing. You don't look for anybody who's going to try to catch you because if you think it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I just go through it, but nice.
I mean, it's LA. You don't got to worry about no police. It's LA. My second question for you is, you've been through a lot of things in your life, and it seems like art has helped you tremendously. What would you say to somebody that is newly diagnosed with diabetes and may be struggling, and they're trying to find maybe something that keeps them going? Because I've known you and a lot of things that you've done within the community, especially the arts community, from people that I know specifically, and you have impacted them in a very special way. But what would be some things to somebody newly diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 diabetes that you would give words of encouragement or anything like that?
It's an interesting question. I try to obviously inspire through my art, but to a new diabetic, I would say it's a lot easier to manage. You have a lot of more control. You should have a bigger community. When we were kids, you never really told anybody. You didn't tell a new girlfriend you had diabetes until you were in love with her. She was in love with you. There's a lot of hope in our community. Just tell people to be positive, to accept that it is a new lifestyle. There's nothing you can do about it. And, you don't wait till your mid-50s or 40s to get back into shape. You just get in shape immediately you have diabetes. Not an easy thing to swallow. You tell them there's highs and lows, and no pun intended. It's a daily battle. And that there's a support around the world. You're not the only one. That's part of my whole thing. Just to say you're not the only one. You can reach out to plenty of people and go. First time I had a conversation with another diabetic, I was like, felt on top of the world. Somebody else knows what the hell is going on. Just to realize that they're not alone. And there's plenty of support there. And we're a gang, so we're all here together.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And we're going to take one final question. Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me a couple of minutes, please. I'm Noriko Kodani from Japan. I'm a diabetologist and I'm also a person with type 1 diabetes. I really wanted to say thank you to dedoc, and I wanted to speak about how your activity influenced so many people. I believe it's more than that you can imagine. I first met this dedoc in 2022. There was a East-West forum talking about advocacy, and that was the first time I met Bastian. And I believe that was the first dedoc symposium held in ESE, right, 2022. Well, to make long story short, it inspired me a lot. And this year, this May, in Japan, we had a Japan Diabetes Society annual conference, and we had people with diabetes come out and speak about their lived experience. And we had people with diabetes registration-free to have the opportunity to join the diabetic conference. And in the room, we did that 3 days in a row. And in the room, they were filled with people with diabetes, healthcare professionals, and also the press. And everyone, it was so inspiring because everyone wanted to hear what they have inside, and everyone wanted to speak out. You might think that Japanese people are very quiet, but on the contrary, people started talking. And as he mentioned before, there were people with type 2 diabetes. And as a people working for advocacy, I try to listen to people's voices every day at the hospital. However, it's never enough. It's never enough. You never notice what people have inside themselves, and it's really inspiring. We're going to continue this every year in Japan too. And I really wanted to thank dedoc and Bastian, and we will move on. We will pay it forward continuously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noriko. You'd think that we planted that as the final comment for the symposium, but we didn't. Thank you so much to everybody. I think that this has been such an incredible discussion. Thank you to our wonderful, wonderful speakers, to Chantal who had to leave. Thank you to everybody for staying and for being here. I always say this to our voices, thank you for showing up, because we need people with diabetes to show up to these things, and the emotional labour of people living with diabetes and then talking about it as well is significant. So thank you, and thank you to the allies, the health professionals who don't live with diabetes but are working in the space and really seek us out at these conferences. Please understand, we see you, we really do, and we are so, so grateful that you make the effort to do this. It is incredibly, incredibly meaningful to us, and we know because you don't leave here and then not think about it again. You take this back to your workplaces, you take this back to your work, and this is how we move everything forward to making sure that we are really making a difference, that we are remembering the value of lived experience. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Don't forget the dedoc symposium, reception. Symposium's done, reception. If you would like information, come up here. You need to register. It's tomorrow night on a rooftop. It's going to be so much fun. And we really hope that we get to see you all there. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.